they'll go with a thing out here in California. Another weekly mention. We have really bad domestic violence law, Family Code Section 3044. Weekly mention on the show. But you'll see these like mean text domestic violence restraining orders. No allegations of physical violence, no nothing. And all of a sudden, an attorney will, hey, there are serious domestic violence issues in this. They are very,
they're really serious.
Yeah, they'll say it over and over again. And I had a couple weeks ago, and the DV stuff was before I had come on the case, but it's literally just back and forth text messages. And he happened to be the one who had the DVRO granted against him. And I just turned to him, and it was actually in a courtroom where there's a pillar between the counsel's tables. So I take a step back and look over to him, and I was like, counsel, can you please explain the serious domestic violence issues in the case? And he immediately changed the subject. But he said in front of that judge probably 20 times in the last 3 hearings, we have a serious domestic violence issue. No, we had 2 parents who couldn't communicate, and by the letter of the law, the judge found that the man had crossed the line. There's no coercive control, there's no physical violence, there's no threats of any violence. It was, the judge found that this individual had crossed the line like 2 years ago in terms of his communication. But when when the truth is put in front of them, they start yelling other things. So it's like I said, it's a way that they keep their clients happy. It's a way they run their bill up, and it's a way they attempt to control the situation.
Yeah, and the thing is, it is unethical. It should be unethical, and it should be punished. Unfortunately, it's not. And I'm not sure I know the answer as to why and how to get it to be enforced. But those ethical rules that should apply to everyone certainly don't seem to apply in family law. And I'm increasingly of the thought process that we need specific ethical rules that apply to family law situations. And
hey, you and I both come from different. So I was trained labor and employment attorney, sports and fitness industry. Like I've seen. I mean, if you have a labor and employment issue, like it's pretty black and white. You're in the personal injury space, and you see how things operate, and it's very procedure based. You have to do certain things. There are definite no-goes, and then you merge into this family court space, and it just, the only way you can explain it to clients is like, well, they just allow things to operate in a gray area.
Yeah, I mean, I explained it to a client today. I said, here's the dirty little secret, that judges and commissioners are worried about dead women, dead children, but they don't care about fathers who kill themselves.
Exactly. Hey, not granting a domestic violence restraining order and something happens, that judge's name ends up in the paper. If they grant it, even though it's not warranted, and the bar's extremely low in family court, they're at zero risk.
Mm-hmm.
They're at they can't gain anything by not granting it.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. And they have a lot to lose, if they get it wrong. So they're just, incredibly conservative on doing that. But also, we talked about this problem before, which is, unfortunately, domestic violence is defined just way, way, way too broadly. And there's this cultural belief that's just wrong. I mean, that's 2 things. We're going to talk about 2 things right there. So, one is that domestic violence is defined so broadly. So in Washington State, domestic violence can be the infliction of fear of violence on the other person. Well, it's supposed to be the infliction, it's supposed to be measured on a reasonable fear basis. And that comes from a case called Marriage of Freeman, which adopted a test from New Jersey called Marriage of Carfagio. So, that's supposed to be what it's supposed to happen. The court's supposed to go, okay, you're claiming that you're afraid. Now we're going to look at the facts, and we're going to see whether or not that's a reasonable fear or not. And if it's not a reasonable fear, then we're not going to call it domestic violence. We're going to call it, put your big boy, shorts on, put your big girl shorts on, right? And be an adult. Okay, but they don't do that. Instead, what they actually do is they just say, oh, it's the infliction of fear. Okay, if the person subjectively says, I'm afraid, then they sort of knee-jerk just say, that they're going to go ahead and, issue, a DVPO. And then here's another really dirty secret, which is, and no one wants to talk about this. There's a public perception in the world and in the United States that men are domestic violence abusers and women are innocent victims. Well, the statistics actually tell a very different story. You are far more likely to die in a mother-led household if you're a child than you are to die at the hands of your father.
There's studies that look at 4 parties in child abuse cases, and specifically, there's a few studies in children that have died. And of the 4 people, they look at mom, they look at dad, they look at mom's new partner and dad's new partner. Statistically, the person most likely to harm a child is mom's new partner. Number 2 is mom. Number 3 is dad, and then there's almost no instances where dad's new partner is the one who is the perpetrator of child abuse.
Right. So I mean that's and those numbers come undoubtedly from the Census Department and from the Department of Justice's Bureau of Statistics, and but try talking about that to the domestic violence industry. Try talking to the domestic violence industry about the fact that roughly 40% of all domestic violence victims are men, right? Try talking about that. Men stand a greater chance of suffering physical violence at the hand of their female partners than women do of suffering physical violence at the hand of their male partners. Try telling that to the domestic violence industry. Now, those are facts backed up by data, but the public perception is the direct opposite. So that implies why? Why is the public perception the direct opposite of what the facts and the data show? And the simple answer to that is $60 billion a year.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's study after study shows that anywhere between, and there's a wide range, but studies show anywhere from, there's a Harvard study that says 70% of the victims of domestic violence are men. But you see anywhere between 40 and 70% of victims are men. Studied, if you look study by study at over the past probably 30 years. So, I mean, it's a serious issue. Then there's also a study out there that says that men are victims of physical domestic violence 15 times before they report, which is obviously problematic. And on the flip side, women are victims 6 or 7 times before they report, right, which is problematic in itself, but that means that men are victims of physical domestic violence if those statistics hold across a broad spectrum twice as frequently as women before it comes to light.